I'm now going to introduce Khat. Khat Bernard is a Ugandan. He discovered the Urantia book in 1997 and he's been reading it since. He's passionate about the teachings of the Urantia book and sharing it with his fellows. He embraces the concept of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man as revealed in the Urantia book. Bernard has facilitated various courses with the UBIS as a way of sharing his Urantia book experience with others and also learned more from others about the teachings of the book. Khat, I hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip, and the whole team for organizing this webinar. Today, and right now, we're talking about we are celebrating the birth of Christ as a renewed hope for humanity. That is the topic we are going to look into. Renewed hope for humanity, the birth of Christ, which happened yesterday. I don't know how many of us celebrated it yesterday. Anyone? Hands up. Okay, oh yeah, oh, great. So it is about since 226 years since Jesus came or was given birth to on earth. Today, yesterday marked the 226 years since he was born. And what does birth mean to us as mortals of this earth? I have the small write-up which says, birth and death are synonymous with mortal man. That as we are living on earth, we are born and we pass through this earth, we go to another world. The Urantia book talks of the Martian worlds. Now, being mortals, of course, we are born. We leave this earth, we live on this earth. After some time, we go to another plane of existence. We are all born to this world, and to enter this world, we have to die. When we view our birth, this is let's look at it this way. We view birth as we died when we came to this earth. That is when we were decoded from our umbilical cord, decoded from our placenta. And from this earth, we lived and we were supposed to go to another world. So this earth may act as a bridge to another world in that sense. Birth for mortal man to this world represents a pathway to this world and to the next. So in this case, let's look at birth as a pathway. It is a conduit through which we use to get to the other world, whether this one or the next. In other words, it's a passage through which we get to any other world that there is. In this case, the Urantia world, the different Martian world, to the different Martian worlds. Religiously, birth gives us hope and anticipation of the journey of our life hereafter. In this case, we see Michael being born, and with him comes hope for humanity. Given the scenario under which he operated, he came, the center of his bestow, that is Middle East, Israel. We find there's a lot of chaos, a lot of rejuvenation of religion, many sects. And he comes into as one of those who gives hope to humanity, who brings enlightenment, who brings a new reality about Christ, about God, a new reality about our humanity and how we should live. Religious birth is a rejuvenation of spiritual growth that directly affects the way we approach and understand God in our. Could you read for us that? I'm blocked somewhere.
Religion is functional in the human mind and has been realized in experience prior to its appearance in human consciousness. A child has been in existence about 9 months before it experiences birth. But the birth of religion is not sudden. It is rather a gradual emergence. Nevertheless, sooner or later, there is a birthday. You do not enter the kingdom of heaven unless you have been born again, born of the Spirit.
Oh, continue to the next. Let's finish that quote.
Many spiritual births are accompanied by much anguish of spirit and marked psychological, I have something covering up that word.
Yeah.
Perturbations. As many physical births are characterized by a stormy labor and other abnormalities of delivery, other spiritual births are a natural and normal growth of the recognition of supreme values with an enhancement of spiritual experience, albeit no religious development occurs without conscious effort and positive and individual determinations.
Next slide, yes.
Religion is never a passive experience, a negative attitude. What is termed the birth of religion is not directly associated with so-called conversion experiences, which usually characterize religious episodes occurring later in life as a result of mental conflict, emotional repression, and temperamental upheavals.
Thank you so much. You could stop there, just, yes. So when we talk of birth, we are saying here, the Urantia book tells us of 2 births. We have the physical birth and the spiritual birth. And in this case, when we talk of the physical birth, of course, that is when a lady gives or bears a child and gives birth to a life or to a child, and animals give birth as well, and the rest, giving birth to the young. While the spiritual birth is a bit unique, but they seem to have something unique about them, something alike, because all of them needs or involves some kind of rigorous activity. We have, when we go back to the, if you could go back a bit, Alice, to the, yes.
How far back did you go?
There, just enough. Many spiritual births are accompanied by much anguish, just like the physical birth. In this case, we look at, when we look at the woman giving birth, we see a lot of pain, labor pangs, and all that. We are seeing belaboring. She belabors to give out that life. And so when we go to the spiritual world, we also have the same. It's not just a simple sail through. You have to struggle spiritually. There's confusion. There is change of attitude. There's a whole lot of psychological disturbance, as you can see there from the quote, that you are not set. Everything is questioning. You question everything. You start to want to understand the unknown world, to understand who is God, who is this being who is moved and who doesn't move, but he moves things, who is not affected by anything, but whatever it does affects us. And that such questioning psychologically disturbs the human mind. And during that time of confusion and of searching for self, that's when the spark, in this case, the thought adjuster, comes in to help out. And that gift of God to us. Because of so many in-depth understanding, you're trying to understand your spirituality, where you come from, what you are, what is this life about. In that confusion, there comes that sense of there is a presence in you that starts to build. And that presence has always been there from birth, but only waited for that moment when you have to spark it off. And that moment right there is when you start, you have activated the thought adjuster and you start to grow spiritually. The same applies to the physical world, the physical labor, the birth. We see stormy activity like labor pangs and all that. But the rewards are very good. We have a young given birth to. And that's a gift of all that pain and all that. And the gift here of the spiritual world is that the gift of realization of the God that there is, that the spirit of truth reveals to you much more truth, much more. You start to realize that you are part of the many, many beings in the world, and that you belong to someone who cares and loves you so much. Go to the next slide. And that's the birth, spiritual birth.
Oh.
When you go down a bit, next slide, we have that. Could you read for us that?
Men are indeed by nature evil, but not necessarily sinful. The new birth, the baptism of the Spirit, is essential to deliverance from evil and necessary for entrance into the kingdom of heaven. But none of this detracts from the fact that man is the Son of God.
Yes, indeed it is. That man, according to the previous presentation, we see man trying to seek out to answer spiritual questions, to answer why he is who he is, why he's on earth, why everything around him behaves the way it does. That by nature he's an inquisitive person, yes, but he can, in his quest of the unknown, of these answers, he can always come to reality, that God will have some way, if he spiritually quests to understand this phenomena, to understand who he is, then he can easily be delivered from that. And indeed, that is when the baptism comes. That one can, of course, most times we go to church and we are baptized, those given names and all that. But it may stop at that if you do not go beyond beyond that physical pouring of water and all that, and all the ceremony, beyond that ceremony, to something now more innate inside us, that we start to grow spiritually as well as physically. In this case, we're seeing that the spiritual baptism, that time when you are self-aware. For example, when Christ was fused with his total justice, that is the time they became one. That is the moment when I would say spiritual birth takes place. And much as he was born prior, about 12 years before, now this fusion between the total just and him, it made him become one. And that is spiritual birth. Most times we should seek out to be spiritually reborn. Now, to be spiritually reborn, we need to work hard towards the spiritual growth. How do we do that? We have to be sick. We have to seek out ourselves. We have to try to understand who we are spiritually. The Urantia book gives us some level of, actually from paper 1 to part 1 of the book, tries to reveal to us that person, that God who we didn't know before, but now tries to reveal himself in a way that we can understand. Before we were so skeptical, we just knew him as a very dangerous God, jealous God, a person who is so far away from us. But if we every day increasingly become aware that God is part of us, that is in our life, that he is always with us at all times, then we can rejuvenate that person in us. And then with the time, we can bond together and be spiritually born. Could you go further, the next slide? Next slide, Alice.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Next. Yes. Here we have some beautiful picture of a mother who has just given birth to a born, and of course all those symbols there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Of course, just I like this picture because It shows, first of all, continuity, as you will see later, that life has to go on, and hope. We can see the star there giving hope to us, that with time, as we go fade away, others come. Could you go to the next slide? Now, I like us to read this quote from paper 193. That quote there, Alice, could you read it for us?
And now you should give ear to my words, lest you again make the mistake of hearing my teaching with the mind, while your hearts fail to comprehend the meaning. From the beginning of my sojourn as one of you, I taught you that my one purpose was to reveal my Father in heaven to his children on earth. I have lived the God-revealing bestowal that you might experience the God-knowing career.
Enough, stop there. Just a moment, sorry. Thank you for that. Now, we can see that Christ himself is telling us what he came to do. That's why he's a gift to us. He says he has come to reveal to us about his Father, about our Father who is in heaven now. That in the reality of who he is, that is the sole purpose of Christ on earth. Of course, we have had stories of Jesus dying on the cross because of our sins and all that. Yes, they could be, but this was one of the most important aspects of Jesus' coming. So his birth on this planet, or birth in our life, was to make sure we are revealed to God and all that God stands for. And surely, throughout the Urantia book, we see who God is, and we appreciate why Christ has come to now try to make us get to know him better. Of course, we knew a little about him because we're using guesswork. But right now, we have a reality before us. And through the birth of Christ, we have a reality. We have hope now that through him, because Jesus represents a true, in this case, literally God, who has taken flesh and become man. Yes. And because of that, we see how important the birth of Christ is. That maybe without the birth of Christ, we would still be in darkness. We'll still be shadow boxing with who God is and what all that is. And then also the gift of the Holy Spirit may not be so much at work as of recent. Could you continue, please?
I have revealed God as your Father in heaven.
Yes.
I have revealed you as the sons of God on earth. It is a fact that God loves you, his sons. By faith in my word, this fact becomes an eternal and living truth in your hearts. When, by living faith, you become divinely God-conscious, you are then born of the Spirit as children of light and life. Even the eternal life wherewith you shall ascend the universe of universes and attain the experience of finding God the Father on paradise.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Yes.
I think it continues.
Yes, it continues. Yes, I know.
Oh,
Yeah, just ahead a bit, back a bit. Yes, we are seeing Jesus saying we are loved by God. That statement alone gives us a sense of belonging, that we have someone who cares about us. But also says, when by living faith you become divinely God conscious, you are then born of the Spirit as children of light and life. That's what I was telling you, that the moment we start to be God conscious, then the fusion between us and the thought gesture, which is a part of God, a gift of God to us, then we are born again of the Spirit. That is the Spirit birth we're talking about. That even the eternal life, wherewith you shall ascend, there's the universe of universes. As I told you, the earth is but a bridge through which we pass. And the path to this world is literally death to the other world, and we are into this one. To get to the other world, we have to die to get to the other world. Yes, there are some who will ascend, who will just go, but most times you have to go through a path to go, you transform to get to the other world in whatever way, spiritually or physically. But in most cases, mortal man always has to sever his code from here to the next world. And therefore, to be born to the other world, he has to sever his code from here in order to go to the Martian worlds. And that is the universe of universes. And that's when we start the universal journey. Like somebody said, the universe is a big school through which we are going to learn experiences and more about the Father. On earth, yes, we learn, but it is little enough for us to easily go attain paradise. That's why you say we are going to experience God throughout our journey. As we are, each stage of our life is, we are born, we go through it, get to the next, like that, until we reach paradise. So every time we take life, we become either mortals, or we take life on another world, Martian world, or paradise, or whatever. We learn, we still learn, we keep on learning, advancing the concept of God in us. And with time, we become embodied to be like Him. And that's why, as we transcend the world, as we transcend these spheres of existence, we are born with a good consciousness, which we have at some point seek out. Then we analyze, we get it. After seeking it out, we get it. Then we start to nurture it in us. That by little by little, we start to nurture it, grow in us, and then we start to share it with our fellows. As we share it with our fellows, we socialize it and make sure at least many of our fellows achieve also what we have, more especially that which is God-given. Next, Alice.
This one?
Yes, Adia.
I admonish you ever to remember that your mission among men is to proclaim the gospel of the kingdom, the reality of the fatherhood of God, and the truth of the sonship of man. Proclaim the whole truth of the good news, not just a part of the saving gospel. Your message is not changed by my resurrection experience. Sonship with God by faith is still the saving truth of the gospel of the kingdom.
Yes. So this is counsel that Jesus is giving, that from way back when he was born, his purpose of his birth, up to the time when he's leaving. This one he's giving us the last counsel. He's telling us, please, I admonish you ever to remember that your mission among men is to proclaim the gospel of the kingdom. Now, this is very important for us as followers of God, that most times we have been, because of the misconception, most of us have been misconcepted in thinking that, in not understanding why Jesus was born, which he has already given us why, to thinking that we have to preach about Christ. What do I mean? I mean, here Christ is telling us that he has come to reveal God. But in most of our dominions out there, we have people preaching about Christ, not the mission among men is to proclaim the gospel. They are not proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom. That is the reality of the fatherhood of God and the truth of sonship of man. They are not doing that. Most times they are what? They are proclaiming who Jesus is and what he is. That's it. They are preaching about Christ, which is synonymous with our cultures. For example, I think in the next slide, I'll talk about the cultures. Please, could you go ahead? The next slide, yes. Continue. Yes. Now, there we go. Before you go there, let me read something from this. Like many Christians around the world, Ugandan Christians celebrate the birth of Christ that involves, among many things, going to church, singing songs of praise, and feasting at home with family, friends, and relatives. It is of recent that Africans, Ugandans, generally celebrate birthdays after the first birth of a child. Most of them forget their birthdays after the first one. This is evident in Uganda when you ask some elderly woman or man when they were born, they will tell you they do not know, but can cite events, ceremonies on the day they were born. Most of Ugandan cultures, tribes, the birth of a child gives hope. Now, when we read this quote from paper 84, it just states what I've just read here, and saying that the ancestor worshippers were viewed the failure to have children, to have sons, as the supreme calamity for all time and eternity. They desire above all else to have sons to officiate in the post-mortem feasts, to offer the required sacrifice for the ghost's progress through spirit land. Among ancient savages, discipline of children began very early, and the child early realized that disobedience meant failure or even death, just as it did to the animals. It is civilization's protection of the child from the natural consequence of foolish conduct that contributes so much to modern insubordination. So from that quote and others, we see that in the before this modern age, we have up to today, most Ugandan, for example, Ugandan cultures, they view the birth of a child as that brings hope, that brings joy in the family and or in the clan, because of basic needs like security, prestige, numbers, and all that. But they forgot the basic aspects of birth in terms of progress. That birth is just one of those, or when you have birth of a child, is progression of life, of humanity, that humanity still lives and exists. Yes. So in that respect, most ancestors did not celebrate their birthdays. For example, in Uganda, we have cultures. I think most of the cultures here and tribes do not celebrate birthdays. The first ceremony is when the child is born. They feast, they enjoy, but after that, they forget. For example, you ask an old man here, he will tell you, I don't know when I was born. It's of recent when people introduced national IDs, identification, or TIN numbers and all that. That's when they started thinking of remembering or estimating their age. Okay? So to them, after the moment one is born, then it is up to nature to take its course. It didn't matter whatever happens. But with the time, they are now coming out of it to know that, yeah, it's important to notice when you're born, probably remember and should celebrate always for being alive. Those days, it was not like that. It has changed over time. Continue, please. Yes. Next. Okay.
So, sorry, would you like me to read?
Yes, could you?
No ascending mortal can escape the experience of rearing children, their own or others, either on the material worlds or subsequently on the finaliter world or on Jerusalem. Fathers must pass through this essential experience just as certainly as mothers.
Could you stop there? Yes. So we are saying that all of us must go through this experience of child rearing. later when we read downwards, we shall see whether you have a child or not, you still have to go through the experience because you take care of someone or anything like that. Why is it so important in this sense? For example, in our tribes here in Uganda, we have a child is a communal person, is cared for by the community, the whole community. In other words, whether you have a child or you don't, you will have that experience of rearing one, because in a community where children belong to the community, we have when a child comes to your place and they do wrong, you punish them or you correct them or you advise in any way, as long as they are children and they are within your presence. You don't leave it to only the parent, the maternal or paternal parents. No, the whole community takes charge of the child. I think in that respect, this is what they mean. However, of course, there is a reason why this statement is so written. That through this experience of nurturing, we get to be loving, we get to be caring, to be kind, and to understand the in-depth of humanity, of how human we are. That it brings out the humanness in us that differentiates us from the animals, differentiates us from the rest of the people. I mean, the rest of the other animals or plants, whatever there is around us. That through this caring, loving, it helps us to build that inner us, the spirit. Because remember, our Father is, the Father's values are within that love, yeah, care. That's where the Father is. Now imagine we are fathers as well, earth fathers, earth mothers. If we can give a bit of that, the little love we have that we're given, and share it with others, that with time as we share and socialize these gifts of God, then we start to master them and spiritually we grow. And I think that father-mother experience of childbearing helps us to bring out that inner us, that inner spirit that gives us the sense of belonging, a sense of oneness. Could you continue, please?
It is an unfortunate and mistaken notion of modern peoples on Urantia that child culture is largely the task of mothers. Children need fathers as well as mothers, and fathers need this parental experience as much as do mothers.
Yes, can't stop there. Yes. So we see in most cultures, like in Ugandan cultures, the Baganda, the Bagishu, the Lukbara, all those are tribes in Uganda. Most of the family or the raising of children is done by the mothers, because most of the time the fathers are off. They're either hunting out there, spend days out, or sometimes they don't want to stay home, don't want to take care of the child, or they don't want to influence the child's behavior when they are young. However, when we go to the Urantia book, we find Mary taking charge of Jesus from infancy, from childbirth to about 5 years, when he takes charge of the child, and later at 5, he gives it to Joseph to take charge. That kind of sharing of roles has not happened yet in most of our cultures. In fact, the world peoples have that problem of raising children, leaving it to the mother. Currently, we're experiencing single mothers and single fathers. So most of the children that are being raised, we have a challenge that they may have bias towards certain sex, given the person taking charge at the time. If it's a father or it's a mother, then probably they will lack in the father aspect. If the father, then the father aspect will be lacking in that child. Because each one of these individuals, these persons, come together to bring unique talent, to bring unique gifts to this child. morally and physically. The presence of a father as a figure, the presence of a mother they give a holistic environment, a holistic growth pattern of a child to appreciate that, yes, the two must be together in order to bring up a holistic child. That what one lacks in the other will have. And that way, there's oneness. And that's why it is very important that at most times it's good for fathers and mothers to work together to bring up a holistic child, more especially the spiritual aspect of the child. Continue, please. Alice. Yeah.
I think that
Wow.
was, do you want the other quotes as well?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Wow. Okay.
So,
yeah, now this is just a small quote. Could you read it for us?
yes.
I have a few minutes left for another question. Continue.
The home life of the Violet peoples was, for their day and age, ideal. Children were subjected to courses of training in agriculture, craftsmanship, and animal husbandry, or else were educated to perform the threefold duty of a Sethite, to be priest, physician, and teacher.
Yes. Yes. We say that a child born to us, we must take charge. We must train them. We must nurture them to bring out either the spiritual aspect and also the physical aspect. And that's why it is incumbent to us as parents to bring out that bit from the child to us. I mean, that the spiritual aspect, grow it, and then the physical aspect also grow it. Such that at a given time, this child can be holistic in both physical and spiritual training. And in Uganda, this has happened. I think around the world, we see the trainings in agriculture and all that. But the problem is most of these trainings are as a form of punishment. For example, agriculture. Most parents use agriculture as a punishment. You know, in Uganda, when the child makes a mistake, for example, at school, they are told to get a hoe and go and dig. Yeah, as a punishment for maybe making some flare somewhere. And that is not good, because then the view of agriculture changes from this child's perspective, that is a punishment kind of venture. And of course, most times our children will always take up most times they always take up our trade. And whatever we do in our families, children pick it up. Remember, they're just blank until we fill in they are born blank, not knowing anything. But whatever they learn from you or from the surrounding environment or other people, they keep amassing. And that's the knowledge that's growing. So you need, as parents, we need to be part of, help the child morally to grow up and also physically to grow up as well. So that guidance will help them to grow spiritually and become better people in the future, and also master their spiritual aspect in life. Continue, please. Continue.
The relationship of child and parent is fundamental to the essential concept of the universal Father and his universe children. Therefore, does such an experience become indispensable to the experiential training of all ascenders?
Yes. The home is the start of training. That's where we all gain our training for the spiritual ascending. Mother, father, they're the ones who are the first trainers in our spiritual upbringing. If we read some papers about Christ, we see that Mary and Joseph take much charge to answer most of Jesus's questions as a child, up to a certain extent, up to a certain period, of course, when he finds that they do not know so much. But at least parents are the first source of information. And so they must always be there to give as much authenticated moral answers to this child, and to the extent that at least the child gets the basics of spiritual upbringing before they go out in the world. Thank you. Continue, please. I think we are running out of time.
Some degree of recognition and a certain amount of appreciation are essential to the development of human character. Without the
Yes.
genuine love of a home, no child can achieve the full development of normal character. Character is something more than mere mind and morals. Of all social relations calculated to develop character, the most effective and ideal is the affectionate and understanding friendship of man and woman in the mutual embrace of intelligent wedlock.
Yes, very interesting. Of course, here we are seeing that in a home, we must be able to give recognition for good works, appreciate, and punishment for the bad works. Punishment does not mean beating or whatever. It can be the rejection of some proposals or the omission of some needs of a child, just in case they've done something bad. But as we do this appreciation and whatever, we are motivating them. We are growing out that love. If we are to depict love or care, we must show it practically on them. Yes, they become a specimen as well. Yes, when you say care for the birds, care for everyone, you show it to them. When you say love one another as you love yourself, show love to them. That way you build the character. Character is a bit unique. It's a big term in this case because it involves a lot of aspects. But you can lay the foundation for a moral upbringing, for a mind that is set to embed itself with the truth, with positive character other than negative characters. And that, of course, it will lead to affection that will later lead to the embrace of the friendship of man and also the knowledge of God. Continue, please. I think we're running out of time. Continue. Oh, okay, there.
Marriage, with its manifold relations, is best designed to draw forth those precious impulses and those higher motives which are indispensable to the development of a strong character. I do not hesitate thus to glorify family life, for your master has wisely chosen the father-child relationship as the very cornerstone of this new gospel of the kingdom.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, just a moment.
Such a matchless community of relationship, man and woman in the fond embrace of the highest ideals of time, is so valuable and satisfying an experience that it is worth any price, any sacrifice requisite for its possession.
Yes. So we see that Jesus took flesh and became man in a family of Joseph and Mary. This showed that he recognized the importance of family. In the many bestows he had undertaken before, we see him just appearing in the different bestows up to the 7th bestow, up to the 6th bestow. He was just appearing and disappearing. However, when it comes to the 7th bestow, he takes flesh and becomes man. And that way, of course, we see why. That it is from family that values and character are built and nurtured, that they are brought up to build a holistic individual who later influences and affects the society positively. A poor upbringing of a child in a given family or an tendency of parents to a child in a given family brings about confusion in the child's mind, brings about unrealized thoughts and unprecedented violence in the mind before even it is depicted physically, because they are not well nurtured and directed in matters concerning self-control, self-esteem, and the like in that respect. However, a good family with good relationships among parents, among children and relatives and friends, we shall see a child embody positive values that build character. Continue.
The apostolic steward was not a good public speaker, but he was a very persuasive and successful personal worker. He was not easily discouraged. He was a plodder and very tenacious in anything he undertook. He had that great and rare gift of saying, "Come." When his first convert, Nathanael, wanted to argue about the merits and demerits of Jesus and Nazareth, Philip's effective reply was, "Come and see."
Continue. Okay.
He was not a dogmatic preacher who exhorted his hearers to go, do this and do that. He met all situations as they arose in his work with come with me. I will show you the way. And that is always the effective technique in all forms and phases of teaching. Even parents may learn from Philip the better way of saying to their children, not go do this and go do that, but rather, come with us while we show and share with you the better way.
Yes, the better way. Come with us. I like this quote because it reminded me how family should approach children. Children are very interesting individuals. They sense emotion, they sense danger just by looking and feeling most of the time. So they will always want to know how the parent, most times the parent, the way they relate with the parent will always infer on how they react to them at any given time. Most times from this article, from this passage, we are seeing that it's not a good thing to always command children. That to nurture a child, we need to be part of them. We need to be like them. Eh? We need to associate with them to feel what they feel. That way, then you can now guide properly. Yes, instead of saying go do that or this as a command or something like that, they feel you alienate them from this statement. The alienation, as they do that thing you've told them to do over time, it becomes as usual. And so they are skewed towards command, or they wait for whatever they tell them to do and they will do. They do not become part of themselves. Whatever they do is not part of them, but they do it for others. And in most respects, they will always go that way, grow up in that respect, not doing what is to them positive or value, but to others just out there. Not that they become selfless, but they do it out of maybe anger or out of because they have told me to do so. However, with the statement down here where we say, come with us, where they say, come with us, and we will show you and share with you the better way. That statement to a child gives them a sense of an understanding of who they are and how they want to be, the appreciation that this child is part of me, and they feel they are part of you, and that way they will do and also devote their inner self to be caring, because that statement alone shows a caring person to a child. It gives a sense of love, that the child is being loved. The child is being given a sense of owning up something, that once they learn, they will also take it to others the way they have been taught. Any other slide, please continue. Okay.
Civilization regards the parents as assuming all duties, the child as having all the rights. Respect of the child for his parents arises not in the knowledge of the obligation implied in parental procreation, but naturally grows as a result of the care, training, and affection which are lovingly displayed in assisting the child to win the battle of life. The true parent is engaged in a continuous service ministry, which the wise child comes to recognize and appreciate.
Continue.
That was the end of that quote.
Okay, good, very good. So here we are seeing the appreciation of what a parent can do to a child. That in the old times, or what civilization has regarded parents to be, they should assume all the duties, that all the duties in a given home are to the parents are the ones who have to do everything. And they seem to own the child. And depending on what they view of the child, if you know the ownership here is in such a way that if it's a selfish ownership, then it is very bad, because then they will give orders here and there for the child to do whatever they want. But imagine if it is an obligation that as a child, a parent to a given child, you have an obligation to teach, to nurture the good in the child, to nurture this child who is so blank that is waiting for you to give them all that you have to give that is positive. So if you have a family that is together, that appreciates God, that appreciates the spiritual uplift and enlightenment of humans, then this child has that fertile ground on which they will grow over time, because the parents will nurture that gift in the child, which is the thought adjuster, that with time it will grow, and this child will start realizing it with time as love and care is being given to them. And that way the family grows, and also society grows by let's say by osmosis. So through that family we can have it affect the rest, just like Jesus did. That through the little family he had, he started affecting the rest of the world, just through the development of from infancy of Mary being the mother of Christ, and Jesus and Joseph. They took charge, nurtured the young Jesus, and later we have an old Jesus who is now proclaiming the good news to all of us, who came from the family just like any other child did up to this day. So what is birth to us? Birth in this case should be, we have talked of spiritual birth and physical birth. We see that physical birth also plays a big role in helping us, that it plays a big role that brings us forth to this world. And through this world, we learn and appreciate the gifts of God and appreciate who God is. And with the time, we are given the spiritual birth. So if you ask me, I think spiritual birth comes after physical birth, but they play a big role in making us understand who God is. Of course, there are some, when I was doing this reading, somebody asked me about children who die young before they have been nurtured. When you read some papers, they will tell you of some worlds there, nursery worlds, which again nurtures these children to grow into becoming those that have the free will to choose what's right and what's wrong. Again, still they still grow, because again they will have their parents to take care of them. Thank you so much for this presentation. I hope there's enough time for us to discuss some questions.
So it's now time. If we've got some really quick questions, perhaps we can have one or two, but really quickly. I don't know if Collins has got his hand up. Collins, go ahead.
All right, thank you, and Khat, wonderful presentation from your brother in Ghana. I think after such a presentation, why you didn't know it's me? All right. After such a presentation, one usually has a reflection more than a question. So all I would say, thank you for reminding us. I mean, you use the celebration of the birth of Christ to essentially remind us of, this technique of birth and death, as a technique of maybe fostering progress, and that it never ends, like you depicted. I mean, we would transition from spheres to spheres, realms to realms, and each one essentially offers us a platform to sort of develop. So thank you. I mean, that's all, and wonderful.
Welcome. Thank you too.
Any other questions? Just quickly, one more. Can't see any hands. Okay, I guess we'll leave it there. Oh, Sebastian, go ahead.
Sorry. Also, thank you from my side. I like very much how you combine the concepts of the Urantia book with real childbearing and education. Many very insightful thoughts there. And I was very impressed by this part of the Urantia book that you mentioned about births being different in reality and also spiritually. It gives hope, because in a sense it's saying don't expect your spiritual birth to be smoothless. It can also be with complications, and that's the way it is. And in a sense it gives hope, because if you are not experiencing it, then you can say, okay, well, then maybe my spiritual birth is having complication, but it's okay. At the end of the day, it will also go through. Thank you very much for the talk again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Okay, so now's the time to have a quick break, stretch your legs, get a cuppa,